name, man?
Hi, my name is Matt, Ranger Matt, and welcome to another day with Slick, a better you. Over the last 3 years, I've had the pleasure of meeting many different people, book authors, pastors,
singers,
motivational speakers, people from television, people from the daytime serial world, and people from Disney.
Why am I asking you this? I already know this. You're from where I'm at, Baltimore native.
Over these 3 years, I've heard many excellent stories. I've had many wonderful conversations, good laughs, and I've always enjoyed hearing stories from people in terms of how they got from point A to point B to where they are today. I've had a blast doing this, and I can't wait to see what else is in store. So sit back, relax, and here's a new episode of Slick, a better you.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You know, it's a messed up family.
Hey guys, this is Ranger Matt. Welcome to another day with Slick, a better you. I have to say real quick, two things real quick. One, thank you for supporting my channel, those who've been watching. When I started this journey back in December of 2019, I didn't know that be 3 years later. As you've seen in the intro, and even later on, I done had so many different guests from Disney, people I've known personally or met through people, or from daytime serials. Haven't done a lot recently because my new job has taken my hours in different directions, but I have been doing it, and I've been my other channel, so it's past. Thanks you guys for watching. As long as you have, I will continue to post Guiding Light and other stuff on there as well. I have a guest on today who I'm excited to have on. Normally, if you know my podcast, you know I have guests on who are more in front of the camera, who help bring characters and stories to life. But today I have somebody who worked behind the scenes, who played a part in this happening. And, I always consider writers, there are times when you want to throw stuff at the screen and go, come on now, change this storyline, end this. But, hey, they write it so far in advance. What can you say? Rather, as a breakdown writer, supporting, what have you, because there's so many writers and behind the scenes people that go into this stuff, so I'm happy to have this guest on. I forgot to mention real quick, y'all probably wondering who know my channel, where's my Ranger hat? Well, it's so hot today, and, I hung it up, and I haven't had a chance to go get it because it's so hot. So I decided to put my, I guess you can say, my off day hat on. So this is in place of that Ranger hat. But anyway, let me get my guest on. Before I do, this guest had the opportunity to cross paths with 3 soap operas that we knew from the past who touched us from over the years. I'm going to play a little intro of all 3 shows, and then I'm going to have her come on, and we're going to do this.
Another world. This portion is brought to you by Mild Ivory Liquid. Ivory Liquid's mildness helps your head stay young looking.
As the world turns. This portion brought to you today by Doctor recommended natural fiber Metamucil, and you could be regular for the rest of your life.
Throwbacks, huh? I have to, real quick, and I hope my guests can bear with me real quick. I have to give a shout out to, we lost Jerry Redorn, who played Ross Marler on God and Light over the years and went and played Clint on One Life. I had the pleasure of having him on twice. We lost him since I did my last show with the Soap Star, and he was I didn't know him personally, but we had a good conversation when I interviewed him, and he liked the God and Light documentary I did. He liked the spirit I had of the show, and he admired my fanism of the show. So, watching that intro, just, it's it's something to think like I'm watching that and Jerry's gone. But same thing with Lisa Brown and Michael Tylo and many others who we lost this year by itself. But anyway, let's get our guest on. He was a breakdown writer for God and Light. She was a part of As the World Turns from 88 to 96, GL from 99 to 07. She played a part on played a writing part on Other World, and she even wrote for Law and Order. And I'm just like, you write for Law and Order, you're there. But let's get my guest on, Miss Penelope
Koechl.
I had it. I don't know why I can't say it.
That's okay.
Hey, Penelope.
Hey. How are you?
I'm doing good. I guess you can say I'm not a fan of the snow, but at the same time, when it's like 90 degrees, I'm not a fan of that either. I do like warm weather, but I was going to say because right now it's just hot, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, it'll be gone by tomorrow. So
yeah.
It's got to hang in there tonight.
And, like I tell all my guests who have come on, thank you for your part in making the shows, the soap operas, but everything you've done. Even though you were a breakdown writer, but thank you for your part.
Writer, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will go to all those particulars in a moment. I'll explain all that. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. But I thank you for what you've done. Without you, and like I said in the beginning, without you and all those writers and people behind the scenes, that wouldn't have happened as long as it had. And it's just it's hard work, 5 days a week. It's not like Dallas where it was like a primetime show. I had to work 5 days a week, and that's a lot.
Well, the fans though kind of keep everybody going because the enthusiasm of the audience, it's a symbiotic relationship. We do our work, then the fans respond, and that kind of gets you jazzed up to keep doing your work. So we all need each other.
Exactly. Okay, so where are you from, and when did you decide that writing? Well, when did you decide that you wanted to get into the entertainment business as far as being a writer?
So I grew up in Wilton, Connecticut, which is actually where I live right now, which is about a little over an hour outside of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really interested in dramatic writing until towards the end of my college career. And then I entered a screenplay contest and I became a finalist. And so I got some education about how to write screenplays. And then I moved to New York City and I worked production during the day. I was on film and television crews during the day. And then at night or at the times when I wasn't employed, I wrote.
Right.
Looking back, like a lot of my stuff wasn't that great. But writing is a craft that you perfect just like anything else. Practice, practice, practice.
Right. How did it come about for you? Was Another World the first one you tackled?
Yeah. So what happened was that I was able to get myself an agent and had a bunch of meetings and stuff, but nothing was really happening with any of my scripts. And she approached me and she said, "Have you ever thought of writing for the soaps?" I said no, that had never occurred to me. And I had a little bit of that prejudice that some people have about soap writing. Like, it's not as good or not as fancy as, writing for feature films or nighttime television or whatever.
Right.
And she said, well, it's a great job because you're employed, which as a writer is a really big deal, actually. You get to work every week. and you get to see actors perform your work every week, which is pretty exciting and wonderful. And then in your downtime, you can write your own stuff.
Right.
So to be at that age, so I was, I think, 27 at that point, and at that point, to be the prospect of actually making a living as a writer was pretty exciting. So back then, Procter & Gamble, which owned via Procter & Gamble Productions the soap operas Another World, As the World Turns, and Guiding Light, had a writer development program. And the agent submitted some of my work to them. They said, oh, yeah, we like her work. And so we'll take her into this writer development program. They actually paid you a small stipend. And you were taught by, at that time, Pete LeMay, who had been the very long-term head writer from Another World and who was kind of a legend in the business. And you learned all the ropes of soap writing. And I did that. And then they said, we have an opening on Another World. And I tried out for Another World. And I can get into what that means in a minute. But they liked my script, but then everything changed there in terms of the writing team, and there wasn't a place for me anymore. And so I sat around and waited for another, I guess, couple of months. And then they said there's an opening on As the World Turns. And so they submitted my sample script to As the World Turns. And they said, oh, yeah, we like her writing. We will pay her to write a sample. And I can, if you want to know what that is, it's kind of interesting, I think, what happens to young writers. So it's, first of all, you get to join the Writers Guild of America, which is the union that represents television and screenwriters. And that's a huge deal. And it's a huge bump up in your career. And it means that you're going to earn a certain amount of money and you're going to get a pension. You know, you're paying into a pension fund, paying into a health fund. So it's like really exciting. So then what happens is once you sign that contract to write a sample, they send you a stack of material, Matt, like 3 stacks of material, like boxes arrived at the doorstep, because it's the history of As the World Turns, right?
Right.
You read all of that material. You have like a month in which you read all of that material. You watch the show every day, and you're on the list the same as the real writing staff. And you receive all the scripts every week and all the breakdowns. And I'll explain what those are in a second. And so you totally get yourself up to speed. And then at a certain point, they say, okay, Penelope, this is the week. This is the week that you're writing. And they give you a breakdown, which is an outline. And you are, as a script writer, I'm assigned that breakdown the same as the actual writer on the show. And I have the same 1 week period to get it in. I have the same one phone call with the head writer to ask my questions. And I turned it in on deadline, and it had to be the right page length with the act breaks at the right places, and the characters had to sound like themselves, and, you know, all that stuff.
Right.
And then they say, great, you did a great job with that. Now you're hired for a trial period. And that's another 6 weeks where they can assign you up to 6 scripts. And you do the same thing every week, over and over again. And usually at that point, you can either be, if they have confidence in you, they might actually, your scripts might actually air. If they're a little nervous about you, you'd still be duplicating somebody else's, right? And that is basically just to see, are you a one-shot wonder? Were you able to get it together and write that one script? Or can you do it week after week consistently?
Right.
And if you pass the trial, then you are hired for usually a 2-year contract. But they have the option to fire you every 13 weeks.
Wow. Never knew that one.
Yeah. Those are the cycles of television. And because things might change and they don't want to be locked into you. Your work might start to slip or whatever. So.
I didn't even know they had you on the contract, with you saying that, because it's like I always figured, they hired you, you stayed there, and at the end of however long you want to be there, you just left.
Oh, no. No, it's a very specific contract. It conforms to the agreement reached by the Writers Guild and producers. with certain clauses in it. And there's a set minimum that you are paid per the union. Then usually if you're a new writer, you're going to start at minimum. And then once you have shown that you can do the job, when your contract comes for renewal, your agent's going to try to negotiate what they call a bump up, try to get you more money. Wasn't she fabulous? You don't want to lose her, pay her more.
Right.
Yeah. And then there are also, each contract might have its own clauses. Like there's always a confidentiality clause, right? That you're not going to share the story. You're not going to, tell anybody, be it at a cocktail party or anybody else, or the other network, what's going on the show. So that's a big part of it.
Gotta knock on your door and be like, Penelope, what direction is my character going into this week? Am I leaving?
I can't say anything beforehand.
Yeah. So you mentioned Pete LeMay. Now his name, I don't know him, but of course his name I remember from watching some episodes of Another World, and his name would come up in the credits. And because you came on, you was on Another World, and you also did GL. Did you know Paul Rausch? I know he produced Another World and Guiding Light in the late 90s.
I knew when I came on to Guiding Light, Paul Rausch was the executive producer of Guiding Light.
Okay.
I didn't actually have much interaction with him, except at like large functions or the occasional meeting or like the occasional writer's dinner. Mostly you go through the channels of the writing staff and get your answers that way. As a writer at a certain level, you don't deal directly with the executive producer on a regular basis. Yeah.
That has to be, this might be a silly question or a statement I'm getting ready to say, doing what you're doing and showing me an example of what you did when we spoke. That's very time consuming, that you gotta go through a whole script and then you gotta literally type out a breakdown for what that actor or actress is going to say for that episode, and then how it's timed from the moment those scenes air until commercial break, what's going to be said when it's come back from commercial break, and depending on if you got a large group or a small group of people. 'Cause I know Guiding Light around right before you left there, the cast shrunk for budget reasons, but I know, like we spoke, As the World Turns and Another World as well, they always had a full cast. They changed cast all the time, so I'm sure that time consuming to write for a full cast or a small cast, either way, for an hour show.
Well, maybe it helps if I describe the assembly line that is writing for a soap opera, because there are 4 different categories of writers. They each have different responsibilities. So there's the head writer, and that's like he or she, and sometimes there's a pair of head writers. They're like the god of Oakdale. They foresee what's going to happen in Oakdale or Springfield for a year to come. And they write something that's called long-term story. And that tells, Danny and Michelle's story arc, Reva and Josh's. It's all pretty much centered around the romances, usually with a mystery or something, a couple of mysteries thrown in, right?
Right.
And it literally gives you a year's overview. And then that's like sometimes like a 35-page document. And with details of all of these relationships and stories, any new characters that are going to be brought on, etc. That's run by the network. And in the case of the Procter & Gamble shows, Procter & Gamble, because they own the show.
Right.
And it's discussed in detail. I was never part of that meeting. That's at the level of head writer, executive producer, and the money people, right?
Right.
And they may like certain things, they may not. That document may get rewritten a number of times. Once that's agreed upon, then the head writer knows that that's broken down into shorter story arcs. Each of those arcs is usually 13 weeks, like the cycles are. And they're usually aimed to hit certain peak viewing times, like my mind going blank, when they set the advertising revenue, sweeps period. So the head writer then kind of comes up with the story arcs that are going to be in the 13 weeks. Then
Right.
they sit down with the staff of breakdown writers, or there's sometimes they're called outline writers. And let's just say, for argument's sake, there are 5 of them, one for every day of the week. Doesn't always mean that you'd always write Monday, but you're going to write one day of the week. Okay.
Right.
And the head writer, based on the material and who they think is good at doing what, they assign, Matt, you're writing Monday this week. Penelope, you're writing Tuesday. Joe, you're writing whatever. And they all sit down around a table, or now they'd be doing it with Zoom. And they spend a day or two breaking down the story into Monday through Friday outline form, like plot wise.
Right.
What's going to happen, with, of course, the emotional content overlaying that and driving all of that. But it's basically, Riva starts the beginning of Monday's show here. She's going to end up Friday, the big tag before the weekend here. What does she go through during the week? What does Josh go through? How do we get them there, right? Their ups and downs.
Right.
And so they talk about that for the whole week, and they map it out between them. So because we've talked, I'm writing Tuesday, but I know what you're doing Monday. I know where you're ending your Monday show so that I can pick it up on Tuesday.
Right.
So it's like a finely oiled machine. So you and I had talked about this, like, how do you know what's asked of you? It's very clear what's asked of you. You communicate about everything, right?
Right.
And then at the end of that week, those documents, every writer turns in a breakdown that is about 15 or so, maybe more pages long. And that's probably gone through a couple of rewrites with the head writer, because maybe they didn't like one scene that you did. They asked you to redo it or whatever.
Right.
And those documents go again before a network meeting, Network and Procter & Gamble, where everybody rips them apart. And then they have to be rewritten yet again. Okay. And then they're considered final, and they go on to the script writers.
Right.
Now, now the script writers are starting their job, while the breakdown writers are starting on a new week's set of breakdowns, right? So we're staggered. Okay. So the breakdown writers wrote about 7 weeks ahead of air. Now the script writer is writing about 6 weeks ahead of air. And we take that breakdown and we basically turn it into dialogue for the actors. We turned it into a 60-page script. We write one of those a week. Each of us has a day that we're assigned.
Right.
Okay. And then at the end, when we turn our stuff in, so that's now we're at the end of this, we're going to 5 weeks. Then there's another writer, the last writer in the process. Is this boring you, or should I keep going?
No, I'm listening. I was waiting to get to the part where I was going to jump in. I was going to add a little humor to this, because I was going to say, so you were saying that y'all took turns day by day. So for instance, if I came to you and said, so Penelope, today, this is well, I was going to say Monday, but today's Tuesday, and you're writing tomorrow for Wednesday. So for today, just for example, I just wrote this whole treatment that Riva and Josh, they're at company and they're having a discussion about their past relationships, and it's going to end to when Riva stands up and gets angry at Josh, saying, "But then you married my sister Cassie."
And she throws a drink in his face.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, the head writers okayed that, including the throwing of the drink, right? Or you had the idea, this is better. They had this argument. You have the idea as the writer, I want her to throw a drink in his face. So you run it by the head writer. I'd like it to end that way. What do you think? And the head writer says, great, go for it. Call Penelope, let her know. Or you got to call me or write me and let me know, hey, I changed this around a little bit. When you do pick up, which is called a DPU in my day, a direct pickup, Josh is going to be soaking wet from the ginger ale or the vodka or whatever on his face.
Right.
And play off of that. I'm like, oh, great. That'll be fun, you know?
Wow.
Right. So that's how it would work. Yeah. But so then at the end of this process, after the scriptwriter turns in their script, and I was mostly a script writer on on all the shows. But Another World was only like 2 episodes. So I don't really even count that as part of my career.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Oh yeah, because then they pulled me off of that show. But on As the World Turns, then I was also the script editor. And then I was a script editor there. And then after the scripts come in, the editor. So think about it. Those scripts have gone through a long and winding road to get to that point. There have been many hands and touching them and many people putting input in them. And the script editor has the ear of the head writer and knows what the head writer wants and knows what their original intention is. And so the job of the script editor is at the end of all this to make it sound like one person wrote this show, right? Consistency of voice, making sure all the characters sound the way they're supposed to sound. Maybe you're good at writing Reva and Josh, but you're not great at writing Cassie and whoever. So I have to bump up your Cassie stuff a little bit, right, to make it sound more like Cassie-like. Or maybe you're good at comedy, but your romance stuff is a little flat. So, you know, I leave your comedy scenes alone, but your romance stuff, I've got to put some more, you know, always, Bud, always, Reva, you know, in there to judge it up, right?
Absolutely.
And then also I know what the head writer at that point intended, like what they wanted out of the scene. And if I feel like it hasn't gotten to that point, I do whatever I need to do. Sometimes you practically didn't touch a script. Sometimes you rewrote an entire script, right?
I got a fan here I actually got a fan on here right now who just asked a question. Her name is Jennifer. She said she read that you wrote the Wall episode for As the World Turns. Was that true? And also, what was it like working with the late Douglas Marland?
Oh, okay. The Wall episode?
I'm not familiar with that one. If she's watching, she might respond back to that one, because that one I'm not familiar with.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, I wrote, you know, how many hundreds of scripts. It's kind of bizarre when you think of it. I worked on between Guiding Light and World Turns. I worked for like 17 years. And you write 50 a year. So
yeah, we'll have to come back to that one if we can. That one I'm not familiar with, but what was
it like to work with Douglas?
Yeah.
So, you know, Douglas was one of a kind. He was extremely talented man, and I think he really found his niche on As the World Turns. You know, he created the Snyder family. He created Lily Holden, the Douglas Cummings story, you know, the Franny Sabrina. I mean, the actors loved him. He had a great relationship with the executive producer at that time, Bob Calhoun. They worked extremely well together. It was a place where we really felt like we were all doing our best work, and we really felt like we were a little mini theater company, like an ensemble company. And everybody, like actors would actually come in to, when they had some time, they would watch other people's scenes being taped just to see their colleagues' work, because everyone held each other in such high esteem.
Right.
And the way I met Douglas was when I was hired. And I remember, you know, having to meet him for the first time. And I was kind of in awe of him because he was kind of larger than life and imposing. We hit it off right away. We later found out we had the same birthday.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Twins.
which was pretty wonderful. And he took me under his wing, and I was 28 at the time, which now doesn't seem that young, but back then I think I was the youngest person writing for soaps. It's a demanding job, and most of the people who were writing for it were a little bit older than that, and had a little more time, you know, having professional writers. He called me Cookie. That was his nickname for me. And it was interesting, actually, because after he passed away, his long-term assistant, Anne, looked through his stuff, and she said, you know, I'm going through Douglas's boxes of papers and things, and she said, "I found your original sample script he kept. Would you like it? It has his notes on it." And I said,
Wow.
"Oh my God, yeah, I would love it. I have it downstairs. I'm going to get choked up." And it just had 2 notes on it. On the cover, it said "young" underlined, and then "good" underlined twice. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, well, of course, when he passed, that was like in 93. I was born in 91, so I didn't even know about this whole world. But I've seen interviews and specials with him on there. I know G.O. did a 92 special for their anniversary, and he was in that with Agnes Nixon. And just hearing him and how he talked about writing for characters, which I think is important, is as a writer, you got to care for the characters and where their journeys are going, whether good or bad. And like you said, he was larger than life. And many fans have said, his term on the show was what made As the World Turns what it was, even though it was good afterwards after he passed. He just, what he did was like, he could have been our next mayor or president or something like that. That's how great he was. And, I didn't even know him.
He started as an actor himself, and
wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, and in fact, I remember him telling me this story. I think I've remembered it correctly. He was on, had roles on a number of soap operas. I believe The Doctors was one of them.
Wow.
And he actually they were shot live at that time, and so if you had to get from set A to set B, you had to move fast during the commercial break to get over there for when the cameras came back on and you were live again.
Right.
And, his role was Dr. somebody. He was the second most famous obstetrician in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the first, I don't know, the second most famous OBGYN. And he had a scene in which he had to talk to somebody in his office, and then after they came back from commercial, he had to be in the operating room.
Right.
And so he talked about how they cut from his office. He has to literally run and like crawl under desks and gurneys, peeling away his suit jacket and pulling on a white doctor's coat. And,
wow.
I was just picturing him doing that. Always brings a smile to my face.
Wow.
But he was a great teacher. And his love of actors, I think, he understood how to create characters from that perspective. What you need as an actor, what you can really sink your teeth into. Right. And he always gave people stories where actors just seemed to relate to them. Like, I think, I mentioned this to you, like the character of Lucinda Walsh. Lucinda did some despicable things, but you knew Lucinda's vulnerability. You knew her impoverished childhood and how she had basically been emotionally abused by her mother. And so even when she was being horrible to Iva and keeping Lily from Holden and whatever, you understood where Lucinda was coming from. You had great empathy for Lucinda, even though she was, driving you crazy,
Right. I mean, it's, for As the World Turns, and we talked about this. I was a fan of Lily and Holden. I had a huge crush on Martha Byrne when I was a kid. When I first watched the show, I'm telling you. But at the time she was playing twins, they had wrote a twin for her character when I first watched the show, and I was just like, this pretty woman, and we talked about this, but 2 characters on the show who I grew an interest to, even though they had bad moments where they considered the villains, but they had some qualities, was Damien and Craig Montgomery. And Scott Bryce originated that role, but Hunt Block, another good actor, he was playing that role on As the World Turns at the time. But Scott Bryce's debut was Craig, and seeing him with Meg Ryan and many others back then, just something about Craig and Damien. I used to wonder at times, like, are they going to kill those characters off? Because I think they might run their course, but they remain, Well, Damien went to jail at the end, but Craig held on until the very end. But
Yeah, Paolo Saganti was wonderful. Scott Bryce, to me, who I know was especially terrific in that role. It was a great role, and he played it with just, he just made it his own. He played it with just the right amount of panache, of humor, of true deviousness, romance, and he's just a wonderful actor. I loved writing for him. He would always give you a surprise in a good way. When you write something, you think, okay, this is in Craig's voice. He's going to be able to do this. I think this is right on the money. And then he would go a step beyond and just give you something back. You're like, wow, I never thought that line was going to be said that way, but that's even more perfect. It's even more Craig.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and as I told you when we were chatting, he could cry on command, which is amazing to me.
You know what? I had to think about that because I was like, he could cry, but you know what? I remember somebody put this on YouTube. The scenes, well, I don't know. I think he was gone by then, but they did an episode where they thought Sierra was dead, and he was on the plane, and the song by Billy Ocean, Suddenly, was playing, and he got emotional, and I was like, okay, so I forgot about that. So because with Scott as Craig, even when he came back to the show in 2007 as Craig for that short time, he was playing. He always plays serious, business, family, or just devious. It's like you just with him getting emotional. I was just like, no, he didn't. But then I remember that episode I saw on YouTube. I was like, yep, she was right. I remember it now. He can do it.
But it's genuine. He's just able to. He just has an ability to really access the emotion, and turn it on and off. Like very quickly get into that moment, truly feel that thing,
right?
Express it, and then you take a break, and he can talk to other people and joke with them, and then you go again, and he can cry again. It's just not many actors can do that. It's a great talent.
It would take me a while. I mean, I can get emotional, but to get emotional on cue, I couldn't do that.
No.
That'd be too hard for me.
Yeah.
Before we go to God and Light, I was going to say two other things about As the World Turns. One thing is I got a little clip of As the World Turns I was going to air, but the first thing I was going to ask you was, now I know that you was behind the scenes, but I know we talked about Craig and Damien, but was there anybody else character-wise that you liked on the show that you liked writing for or loved seeing on camera?
Oh, I loved all of them. I had a great time writing on that show. I think I told you I love writing Margot, both as Hilary Bailey Smith and as Ellen Dolan. I loved writing Lucinda, even though, she would ad-lib wildly. It's okay. I still love writing for her. Larry Brigman, who played Dr. John Dixon, was fabulous. Carly, it was just, it was a great, Susan Stewart, it was a great group of actors and really a pleasure to write for everybody. And Duncan McKechnie, Michael.
Yes, the Irishman.
Tamara Tooney.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bill Fickner, who I don't know if you remember him. Josh, he was Lily's father.
Okay, yeah, the hayloft scene when Iva broke their fight up, and right.
She's your daughter.
I have to say real quick, I mean, Duncan was on the show when I was watching it. He did make a visit when they brought him and Jessica's daughter Bonnie on years later, but I love the connection y'all did with Duncan and Jessica. That was two interracial couples, and that the Irishman and this district attorney. I mean, it's like there was an episode I seen that I loved that I got download when I can, of Duncan chasing Jessica around her office and then finally pulling her into a kiss.
I don't remember that one per se, but yeah, and he was also paired with Shannon before that, who was terrific.
Right.
He liked strong women who gave him a run for his money.
Right.
Tamara Tooney's had a great career. I mean, she's a very wonderful actress. I don't know if you ever saw Flight with Denzel Washington. She's terrific in that.
I gotta see that one.
Yeah. He's the pilot who's an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays the head flight attendant on the Plains. She's really, I mean, she's done a lot of stuff. She's been on Law and Order SVU. She's done where she was for many years, a medical examiner. Yeah, she's a great actress.
I gotta see that, but I did see the episode we talked about with Beth on Law and Order, and I thought that was really, really.
Isn't that great? It's Law and Order SVU, by the way, just so people aren't confused. It's not Law and Order, what we call the mothership. It's not the original. It's, you know, because there were two spin-offs, there was SVU and Criminal Intent, and now there's Organized Crime, right? So what I wrote for was SVU, Special Victims Unit.
I was going to ask you about that, but since we got into that, what was that like writing for Law and Order? I mean, that was obviously a different thing to do. That wasn't soap operas.
Yeah, so I was writing at that time, writing partner with Jill Laurie Hurst, who was my script editor at Guiding Light, and then afterwards, briefly, I think for a year or more, she was a head writer, a co-head writer at Guiding Light. So after Guiding Light ended, she and I partnered for a while, and we wrote this episode, and it was just one episode of SVU, which is called a freelance episode. So we weren't on the writing staff, but every season they give new writers a chance to try their hand, and we got picked for that. We pitched some ideas. It was very different than soaps. It was radically different than soaps. First of all, well, she and I went into it and we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We thought we did, but we didn't. We're used to, with Guiding Light, for example, you write your script and then other people take over.
Right.
The producers go on and the directors, and they break down the script and they do their thing, and you're on to your next script. And so when we were done with the writing portion of things, which involved, a lot of meetings with the showrunner, the two showrunners, we thought, well, we guess our job is our job over with? Like, we didn't know, and we were afraid to ask. We didn't want to sound stupid. So we're just like, well, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, I wonder if we come in tomorrow, to the studio at Chelsea Piers in Manhattan.
Right.
And then we get a text saying from the AD saying, 7 a.m. call tomorrow for the van to scout locations. I'm like, oh, I guess they still want us,
Right.
So it turned out that on an episodic show like that, the writer stays through the entire thing, through casting, through location scouting, choice of props, choice of costumes, shooting, and then to less extent post-production. So we went from all of that pre-production to being on the set every day, with Mariska and Ice-T and all of them.
That's my boy right there, Ice-T.
Oh, he's the best. He is the nicest guy. He is a sweetheart. He, Jill and I have to be careful how I word this, because I don't want to say anything that's inappropriate.
Any children watching this, turn the channel right now.
Yeah, so we were sitting there in what they call the video lounge, which is where you're watching you're behind the monitors,
right,
in another little separate room, in your little director's chairs that all say writer on them. It was so exciting. And we're on a break, and Ice-T comes in and sits next to us, and so he was like, so, ladies, I hear he was interested in us. Like, he's a big star, but he wanted to engage with us. Like, we're new people in his neighborhood. He wants to meet us,
Right.
So he's like, so ladies, I hear that you wrote for the soap operas, you wrote all of that, like dual personalities and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh yeah, Ice. And he's like, yeah, you wrote some serious shit, man. It's like,
oh man.
he was so funny. He was just so cute, and he'd sit with us all the time, and couldn't have been nicer. They were all lovely. They were all so welcoming.
I keep saying, and I don't know if my mother approves of it because we're in a different time frame now, but I keep saying I almost did it recently because my hair was long. I said, I want to get my hair in a ponytail like his. I like ponytails, So I used to jokingly say that, you know what? I'm gonna get my hair in a ponytail and do like how he did. I can't rap like him, but I can do it like smooth.
So you know what was interesting is I don't know if you watched our episode of Law and Order SVU, which is called Fashionable Crimes, and it's about a fashion photographer that rapes models.
Oh,
And his brother is a big fashion designer who kind of protects him and keeps him from getting caught. But they were casting the one of the supporting parts, and Jill and I actually recommended Tom Pelfrey, who played Jonathan on Guiding Light, and he got the part. Of course, he got the part because he's a terrific actor.
right.
And so that was really wonderful to have him on set. I don't know, 4 to 5 days or whatever. And he did a great job on it. So if there are fans, they can watch that episode if they want to see Tom Pelfrey. He's also been on Ozark. He played Laura's brother on Ozark.
Yeah, Tom is on that list of people, I guess you can say now, like I said earlier, like with Meg and Julian, he's on that list where people were, after he got off the soaps, because he's still taking off. And I haven't seen the show, but I know he got nominated. I believe he did for his role.
Ozark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause when I see Tom Pelfrey, what comes to mind is the long hair, Lady Had, he was on Guy I Like.
Mm-hmm.
So and I gotta say, I tell people all the time, when I remember when the episode aired, when him and Tammy kissed, I was like, but they're cousins. That's weird. They're cousins. But then I was like, well, you know what? At the end of the day, even though it's weird, technically Cassie and Reva didn't share the same father. They shared the same mother, so they could be like half cousins. And I guess we could. Right. And plus, it's a soap opera, because I don't think no other show tackled that kind of thing where they had kissing cousins. I think Guy Light was the first. I
can't remember the details of that storyline, but I'm sure that we didn't do anything that was even considered remotely incestuous, because they would not go there. That's the kind of thing that gets discussed, a lot before the decision is made to do it. So
I was like, I still remember to this day, I was in 8th grade, and when that episode first aired, and I'm watching this in my grandfather's house, I'm like, they're cousins. And what is Cassie going to say? What is Reba and them all? And then she's dating Sandy. And I'm like, what are they all going to say to that? And then you had, I don't know if we had a hand in that, but Jonathan's father, Nate, who was abusive, that was interesting.
I don't remember that.
That was
Wait, who played Nate?
Oh, man. Somebody watching this guy help me out. I mean, I see his face better than the name, but I know his name was Alfred. And ended up being, it was Nate, and ended up being Alfred Randall, but he was Jonathan's father who abused him, and he ended up getting killed off in the summer of 2005 in a boat.
Oh, I was writing then.
No.
I don't remember it. It's weird. It's all starting to blur together, Matt. I got to tell you.
It's okay. That's
when I was writing, and I had to know every single character and all of their relationships, and who they'd been married to, and how many times they'd come back from the dead, and how many illegitimate children they had, and I knew every single thing, especially when I was the editor at World Turns, because you're also like the tracking continuity history person. You have to know all of that stuff. But now it's all kind of blurring together.
Well, I have to say, that's what I was going to ask you. When you was on As the World Turns, did you write for my girl, Barbara?
Colleen Zhang?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, of course.
There was something and my boy, we lost Benjamin a couple of years ago. His portrayal was Hal, Barbara and Hal was like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was a wonderful, wonderful actor.
Yeah.
It's very sad. They lost a lot of people from World Turns. Michael Morrison and Yeah,
it's on there, GL. I mean, it's like I said, like I was thinking about Jerry earlier. It's like it's weird when you watch these. If you rewatch these episodes, it's interesting to think like a lot of them are gone, and then we lost Kim as the world turns, and Marnie, who was Allison on As the World Turns as well recently. It's just interesting.
So on World Turns, I was behind the scenes more because I was the show's editor. And so I had to be involved on things or sometimes talk to actors or be on set, you know. On Guiding Light, I never had that role. So you're kind of insulated. You're part of a writing team. And in fact, as a script writer, you know, the joke is that you're a script writer, you live in a little hole. And every week they open a trap door above you and they throw a breakdown in. And at the end of the week, you open the trap door and you throw a script at them. And it's like,
whoa,
you never see anybody. You know, it's like you're desperate for contact. And so I know people are going to think this isn't too glamorous, but this is the job, you know. And so when I could, you know, when those things came up, like the daytime Emmys or the Christmas party or some other dinner or photo op, like they're going to take a cast photo and the writers, and nobody even knows what we look like. We get to come down there and be part of the photo. You know? Like, who are you?
oh gosh. I actually pictured you. I actually pictured that when you said that. When you said I actually pictured you being locked into a ground cage and them throwing you a ball with a script tied to it. You gotta write it. You gotta launch it back up to them. They're like, here you go. So,
but over the course of time, I got to know some of the people anyway. And as I think I told you when we last spoke, some of the actors were very nice and very complimentary. And when they liked something that you had written for them, they wanted to thank you for it. And they would call up. Michael O'Leary did that. Beth Ehlers. Yeah, all of them did it actually at some point or another. It was really real professional courtesy and very, very nice. And so I kind of established relationships that way a little bit.
I love both of them, by the way. Michael O'Leary is Rick. He's a funny guy. And I always said Beth Ehlers, you know, I don't know what it is about Beth Ehlers as Harley, but I always said Beth had the most, which is interesting. Y'all had two Beths, Beth Ehlers and Beth Chamberlain.
Right.
And I used to say Beth Ehlers has the most cutest little nose. It's like you want to kiss it.
Cute and beautiful at the same time.
Yes.
And I loved writing for her. She was very, well, I loved writing for all of them. But I like the character of Harley. Harley could be, there was something that I wrote. And again, you have to give credit to the breakdown writers who come up with a lot of these ideas. But there was one scene where she is going crazy. It's kind of like a Lucy and Ethel kind of thing where their fax is spitting stuff out or whatever at the police station. I can't remember, but I just remember her comic timing was phenomenal, you know.
Right.
And you also have to remember that they are, you know, doing a couple of takes. That's it to get some of this stuff done. And so that's, you know, an amazing thing about soap actors is that they, and I don't know if, you know, fans are aware of this, that they have to memorize a lot of material very fast. And it's a very long day and they don't get many takes and they don't really get hardly any rehearsal either. So you'll go with your scene partner and rehearse with them and kind of, you know, prepare as much as you can because you really have to turn on from the moment that you get in front of the camera.
That script you sent me that I looked over, I mean, from what you were saying about them, you know, that acting process, because I've talked with them about that. It's like I used to ask him, you know, what is the secret to that? Because it's like, you know, you would think some of that they might make up because it memorized all that material and the way I looked at how you wrote that and I tried to memorize Jeffrey O'Neill's lines with Gus and I was like, I had the first half and then by the second I was like, I don't have it. I don't know how did they do that? It's a process.
Now some people like Jordan Clark who played Billy, I heard this, that he had a photographic memory.
Right.
You could actually just see it and it was memorized and he was always verbatim.
Right.
Other people had, you know, varying abilities to memorize and it depends on how much material you're given in that day. And it also depends on the quality of the writing. So if the writing feels natural to you and if it's your thought process as an actor in that character, if it makes sense that you would speak that way and say that thing, it's a lot easier to memorize than than dialogue that is awkward or doesn't feel like it's in your voice, you know?
Right.
But still, on the soaps, we like, if you write for the theater or a feature film or most television, they're very strict about what you can, about the actor sticking to their lines. Like on SVU, literally Mariska Hargitay would come up to me and say, I was wondering, could I let this word go? I was like, you do whatever you want. You're like brilliant. Of course you can let that word go. If you're having trouble saying it, please. But, you know, much stricter there. So on soaps, it was kind of like they have so much to memorize. If it's not exactly on the line, if they get to the general place, say what they need to say, you know, we're fine with it. The only time it really mattered is if, for instance, if you're like doing courtroom scene and somebody has to say something an exact way, right? Because it's going to be picked up or it's going to become part of the court record or something. Or if it's these lines that you want to become the signature of a character, like Reva and Josh always said, always, right?
Right.
Well, so if one of them said forever, you'd have to go, no, sorry, you got to say always. You know, always is important to your characters, right?
Exactly.
But other than that, if they were generally in that area, they said what needed to be said, then you just went with it.
Man. Well, I gotta say, like I said earlier, I got a clip now. I don't know if you had a hand, and yeah, it's not long, but it is like a little 3 minutes long. But just some moments from As the World Turns and Guiding Light. Now, I don't know if you had a hand per se in terms of the breakdown of these writing material scenes, but I got some moments here, and like they say, let's take a walk down memory lane here.
Okay. Sounds good.
I say a prayer.
As the World Turns.
Children, your grandchildren have all forgiven you. I mean, hell, they think you walk on water.
But that was after I was raised from the dead.
Oh, yeah, you weren't even here for a decade or two. You disappeared.
And yet here I am. Here I am. After all these years, here I am. And you wonder why. Why my kids would take the bullet for me. Yes, I do. Tell me. Because I wouldn't put the bullet in them first. You can't put the bullet in them. Trying to be funny, Buzz. Oh, wasn't I? I was trying to be funny.
The lonely other woman.
I have fallen in love with a man who's trying to save me.
The neglected husband.
You wouldn't even give me a thought if it weren't for Kim.
An unexpected opportunity.
I'm just very needy right now. Go home. Go home.
I can't. Leads to forbidden passion as the world turns.
she walked away from an empire, waiting for the perfect opportunity to take back her company. Joan Collins returns to television as Alexandra Spaulding.
Won't they be surprised to see me?
And she's about to get it on. Coming soon to Guiding Light on CBS, the #1 daytime network.
Well, what you think of all that?
Never a dull moment, Matt.
Yes, a lot of moments on As. I mean, I know that those were a lot of dramatic moments on As the World Turns.
Yeah, a lot of action you picked too. A lot of action scenes, explosions, and stuff.
I know. I mean, I was trying to find something simpler, but then I made a montage of epic moments on As the World Turns. So it was Mike and Rosanna when the explosion thing happened, and Margot pulling some guy she was chasing, and
it's Margot pulling the plug on Casey Peretti.
Yeah,
that was really very sad.
Yeah,
and what else there? Nothing with Duncan and Shannon.
I gotta go through that. I mean, I have their wedding. I do have that, but I couldn't find much on them. That was another thing where I thought I had a scene where Duncan punched Gavin Kruger out. I don't know if he was on when that happened, but I had a scene when he did that.
Yep. The Gavin Kruger character. Yeah. No, it's interesting to see. I mean, as I said, like a lot of this stuff, you actually kind of forget. There's just so much of it. And at this point now, it was a while ago, Right. I came back to work on As the World Turns for 6 months just before it went off the air, 2010. Guiding Light, I left 2007. So it's been a while.
I did. Well, I think you saw Jonathan and Tammy in that montage. Yeah. I had that and Reva and Josh and some others because that too. They, people have their opinions of Guiding Light toward the end of the show's run. That it just took a downward spiral toward the end, but. Other than the production stuff they did when the show ended, where they were filming outside that camera setup, other than that I questioned because the soap opera was doing that one. Other than that, I think they had some good materials over the years. And like I said, you guys behind the scenes breakdown or head writing, you guys brought it. But it is a challenge. You're writing for this stuff every day for years, and then they keep it fresh. And it is a challenge.
Well, that's why soaps, people always joke, like if you saw Soap Dish or, any of these films that make fun of soap operas, people always joke, and I joked speaking with you, someone comes back from the dead 3 times or has yet another illegitimate child or something. And the problem is that when you're spinning stories so much, 5 days a week, basically 50 weeks a year. So there's a total of about 2 weeks that you take off between Christmas break or the NCAA championships or whatever. Those are where they preempt the show. But other than that, you're on 50 weeks a year. So it's really a challenge to come up with material. And where most shows, I think, tend to go off course is when they stop drawing their story from characters and character relationships, and in an effort to make something exciting or interesting, they start putting in incidents like crimes, right, like explosions, like the terrible virus that takes over the town, or poisons the water or whatever. And most of those stories tend to not turn out to be the best stories. It just usually is that the stories that the fans, that most of us remember, are like Susan and Bob with their infidelity. It's Danny Santos's struggle against his mother, his internal struggle about being a crime lord versus basically wanting to have a normal life, and be in love with the girl he's in love with. It's those kinds of things which don't sound very exciting when you're pitching that to the network or to sponsors or advertisers, but it's those relationships, those struggles amongst the characters that really is what the fans tune in to see.
Right.
And sometimes people have also joked that you could leave Guiding Light and you could come back a year later and you'd still know everybody and what was going on.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because aren't we all who we always are? We have our ups and downs in life, but if you check back in, came to here last year and to Wilton, you came back, yeah, I would still be here. I'd still be doing my thing, having my relationships.
Exactly. Right.
And so the soaps are unique because you feel like that is your family. That's your town, that's your family, those are your friends, or some of them are people who you don't like very much. But again, we all live with people who are a pain in the butt or we don't like very much, or
You're exactly right. I mean, with GL, I considered them like my other family, when I got hooked onto the show. Because in the early 2000s, the show centered a lot around St. Christabel and Danny's family. That was the center of the show pretty much when the 2000s.
That's when I started writing. So I started writing in 2001.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, so I didn't tell you this before in the email, but a lot of the people I've interviewed, do you know this? Not to sideswipe the conversation, but I had an interesting childhood growing up, and one of the things was I was bullied in school because of my weight. I was a little more chubbier than how I am now, but coming home from that and watching the soaps, and it may be weird for somebody to say that because none of my friends knew I watched soap operas. My mother knew because we didn't have cable at the time like we do now, so you watch, and that was kind of my escape because I didn't do sports. I didn't stay in school. I always came home and I watched kids shows and teen shows, of course, but there was something about the soap operas that caught my attention, and I guess that's why I became a writer. The very first thing I wrote was I was in 5th grade, and I named my show after my 5th grade school. It was Winfield Elementary. I named it WK for Winfield Kids, and because of Danny wearing the other jacket all the time and being so serious in the beginning, but between him and I don't know if you ever watched General Hospital, but Maurice Bernard, Sonny, he was in the mob as well.
Yeah.
I based my character around them because they were so serious, nobody messed with them, but that was just my escape from what I was going through in school and at home. Because my mother was a single parent, my father was not there, but just all that and coming home watching that was just my escape. So I considered all of my buddies. I remember when I had David Andrew on, who played Edmund. I interviewed him. You saw him in the intro.
I loved writing for him. Oh, what a great actor.
Yeah. He was an incredible guy. I remember telling him, David, there were times where I didn't know where they was going to take Edmund, because I was, 1 minute he was bad, then he was good, then he switched to base with Michelle and Cassie. So I'm like, are they going to kill him off eventually? Because he was just so bad. But you still watch the show. It grabs you. You wanted to know where the good was going to go. If somebody was going to get back, if Danny and Michelle, Reba and Joe, if they broke up, are they going to get back together? Right. If like a villain like Carmen or Edmund or anybody, are they going to pay the price? Are they going to go to jail? You watch this stuff, and it was my escape route, and I guess that's why I'm a writer today, because from me watching Guiding Light and World Turns, and there was another show called Port Charles on ABC. Mm-hmm. I loved that show, and that was a half-hour show, and all my children wanted to live. We had SoapNet that re-aired Dallas and Another World.
Right.
It might sound crazy that people like me who always watch this stuff, even today, we only got 4 soap operas on now, but it's entertainment. For some reason I could watch that versus watching the reality show for some reason.
You know what? I think part of it, maybe this is part of what you're feeling. There's a sense of comfort that you do come back, and it does change, but it never changes.
Right.
And you feel safe, and you feel like I can plug into this, and there's continuity in my life. And you also do, I think, start to feel that these people are your family and your friends. And also what you're talking about is that, when you said, is Edmund good? Is Edmund bad? Well, the idea in most soaps, the way the characters are written, is that the villains, there's always something redeeming.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be redeemed that you hope will be redeemed. And it's either going to be, it's usually love, the love of somebody that is going to make them change their ways. You hope.
Right.
If people can change, which we never know, which is why we keep watching.
Well, I mean, I guess in the way y'all changed him, I mean, he ended up getting involved with Cassie, and this was a woman that he terrorized when she was with his brother. And I'm just like, I remember when that, just like with Jonathan and Tammy, I was like, but he kidnapped her and threw her in the tower and terrorized her when she was with Richard, his brother. And now they're kissing and talking about getting married.
That's a trope of soaps that, you start people in incredible opposition. And often, unfortunately, it has been kind of with the man being in some way abusive to the woman, which is not a good thing. Especially, back when General Hospital, when there was Luke and Laura, when Douglas Marland was on, nowadays you couldn't have him rape her and then them end up being a super couple.
Right.
Would not work anymore.
Right.
But yeah, but again, you're always waiting to see the bad boy redeemed, or,
I guess that explains.
Who can love save us all, right?
People have, even with Roger Thorpe, that was another character, him and Holly, though, in the early years, that was, that relationship, it was like the writers got them to a point where, okay, he raped her and then he died, came back, and then years later, they ended up becoming a couple. It was like what you were saying, it's just.
And of course, nowadays we have different standards in a lot of things, and about the way a lot of people are portrayed and stories are portrayed, and that wouldn't fly anymore with anybody.
Right.
It's the same thing as Clark Gable carrying, Scarlett up the stairs. Might not fly either. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think that you grew really close to those people in a way. Well, to me, it's interesting to sort of segue into talking about nighttime television, because so much of what was done in soap operas has now been picked up in nighttime television. It used to be that, and I say nighttime television, I mean streaming too. I mean Netflix, Hulu, any of those original productions. Originally, serials, episodic television was much more episodic. In other words, an episode of Murder, She Wrote, let's say, or whatever, was freestanding. And now almost all shows are serials. So one week follows the next week, follows the next week, and stories extend beyond their 1 hour time slot. And, that wasn't always the case. So in some ways, they've all taken over from soaps. They've all learned from soaps. A way to keep an audience and keep you invested in characters is that in each episode, you might have some storyline that ends, but you have others that continue and bleed in and continue on. Right. And it's interesting that the same things that people used to complain about with soaps, like you said in your introduction, I wish that they'd just cut this storyline short, like it's not working anymore, or, not happy with this storyline. Well, don't you find that now in episodic too, where, there's almost inevitably, if a show stays on long enough, there are going to be a couple, at least one season that's really rocky, where you almost want to turn that show off. You were such a fan and you're like, I don't even like this show anymore. They turned this character I love and it's somebody I don't even recognize. And, I don't like this new character that they added, and it's not the way it used to be. And, and that's writers, desperately attempting to try to keep the show going, to try to come up with try to take it in a direction that honors what exists, but also is fresh.
Right.
Very tough to do.
Yeah. But without you and those writers, no breakdown, but like all you writers, because everybody is a writer regardless. Without that, those shows would not have been where they were, and who knew what was going to happen, and you even was an extra, you.
Yes, I was. During the writer's strike of '88, I was an extra twice on As the World Turns. That was pretty funny.
So are we going to see you when Young and the Restless pop on, or Days of
I don't want to be in front of the camera. I think that lots of times actors make great writers, especially on the soaps. But writers don't always make good actors.
I would want to say, because if you were to come out the daytime, I could see, you guys should have seen with Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, because that's tough man there.
Oh, I'd do that. That'd be fun. No, I've tried, I've taken acting classes, I've taken directing classes, because I think it's important to understand what other people do and how they do their jobs. But I would never want to act. I just don't have that. It's like genetic. It's like you either have that in you or you don't. I don't understand how they do what they do. I don't understand how you can walk into a room and hit your mark and remember your lines and know where your light is and all of that technical stuff, and also be totally believable that you're upset or angry and do it 20 times over exactly the same way. I have no
idea either. I did. I mean, I've been in some of my short films, but I did one play at my school in 3rd grade, and it was about garbage. I don't know why, but I don't know why. But the lines now as a kid, I had problems pronouncing certain big words. So I remember jokingly telling people, I said, some things I could say, but don't ever write me a script where I gotta say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins. Don't give me that. Right. But as a kid, I in that play, I had a line and there was a word I couldn't pronounce, and I thought I could get it. So I tried to switch with a buddy of mine, but we couldn't. And then when it came time to do the show, I guess my brain locked from that word, because when my turn to get up on the mic to say it. And mind you, it was in the gym, and it was a stage in there, and everybody was sitting on the floor.
I'm getting nervous just hearing you tell it. This is
and
like the stuff of nightmares. This is like my nightmare. I would be on the stage and
right. And mind you, the girl, even though I was a kid, she was sitting there with her friends and classmates, and my turn comes up, and I said the first few lines, and I get stuck on that word. We're on stage, and I got stuck. Right there.
You went up.
My classmates was behind me with my teacher, and they're waiting for him. I can't get this word. So somebody had to finally come up to help me, to help move the time along. And afterwards, I was like, don't put me in nothing else. Just today, I don't know. But back then, definitely, I was like, no, I can't, no.
No, people have these recurring nightmares or bad dreams about, you're in school and you never studied for the test, or you forgot the test or whatever. I would have recurring, this sounds like a weird dream, but if you're a stage manager on a play, you have to be prepared to go on in the event that a cast member falls by the wayside. You can go on script in hand, but you still have to go on. And I would have a dream that, I was the stage manager and I had to go on, and then I lost my script. And so I'm up there flying blind. It was an anxiety dream.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I just thought your fans would really want to kind of know what goes on from the writing point of view, because, I think I mentioned this to you, that when I was writing for the soaps, I would go to a wedding or meet people at a cocktail party, and they would have all these misconceptions about what it meant to write a soap. They thought you wrote for one character, or you wrote certain kinds of scenes or something, and they didn't understand that you had to be prepared to write anything, any character, any day of the week, 2-character love scenes, 20-person weddings, wedding vows, opening and closing arguments in a murder trial, action, police lingo. You just had to be able to write anything. And some of us did better on certain things than others, which is how you got assigned the script.
Right.
Like if I know that you excel at comedy, I'll give you that. And if somebody else excels at romance, I'll assign them that day. But yeah, I just think, it's a lot of audience members don't really understand. So I'm glad that we had this time to talk about it. And
yes, ma'am. And I'm glad you was able to come through. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it was behind the scenes or in front of the camera. So was a part of my childhood, even today, with what I do. I'm working on a movie right now. And, I'm always happy to hear the stories. And you educated me, like we talked when I emailed you. You educated me because, I didn't know like the structure of how scripts were broken down from that first part you showed me to the final part to where the actors, their dialogues is like, I didn't know that's how it was broken down. I mean, but you educated me, and I know you educated my fans here. So I hope, I don't know what the final you're going to give me, Miss Penelope, but I hope I pass the test with 100% A+.
Okay. All right.
Well,
it was great talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's been lovely going down memory lane.
Yes, ma'am. It's been a blast. I hope my fans appreciated it, and I'm glad you came aboard. Let me just close out the show, and I'm going to come right back to you.
Okay.
Oh, anything you want to say to the fans from?
No, just thank you. The fans are why everybody is in that business, and, you keep everybody going, and you're a true fan, like you really are, from watching from such a young age. And that's, it's very, very fulfilling to know that you can write for people, or that actors can act, or the directors can direct, and that you're giving people that kind of emotional experience. It's really great.
Yes, ma'am. Well, guys, you heard her. So I'm going to bring you right back. I'm right back with you. Oop, sorry. Well, I didn't get a chance for her to say properly goodbye, but thank you guys for tuning in today. It's been a blast. I had a blast talking with Miss Penelope and just hearing the breakdown structure of writing. Now I'm ready to send my breakdown writing resume to Young and the Restless, and maybe they'll pick me up. I'm ready now. But thanks again for tuning in today. And like I always say, to help advance, better help advance yourself so you can better help advance others. Because sharing is caring. And today, with so much going on, you need a lot of love and support. So thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, you have a blessed day now. See you later.